Hey folks, Matt Sharp here with another Friday Fishing Report. This is where we look at the framework of fishing in Vancouver. We take a look at current events, we take a little look at industry news, and then obviously we talk about the fishing. This weekend's a big one. It's Labor Day. A lot of you guys are probably wanting to get out on the water. So in this report, we're going to talk about the pink fishery on the Fraser. There's a lot of changes there, a few regulation tweaks. We're also going to take a peek at the Squamish River pink fishery. It's been doing really strong up that way. And then we'll take a peek at saltwater fishing for Chinook because it's maintained its strength. There's some caveats to that one and we'll talk about it in the report, but it's definitely worth getting out on the water. Then we'll circle up and we'll do a little look at our river trout fishing as well as some lake fishing stuff. So if you see anything you like in this report, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and without further ado, let's get into the report. Labor Day weekend. It's definitely a big weekend, and I know a number of you want to get out on the water. Looking at all that I've seen here in the report, it definitely looks like a good weekend to get out. I'm going to try to get out Monday, probably go out on the saltwater, chase some Chinook, and then maybe take a rip up the river and see if we can chase some dinosaurs. One of the ones this week that sort of industry news side of things was Barstool Sports filmed an episode with us roughly 3 months ago now, and they finally published it. It's a really cool video. I definitely recommend taking a peek at it. It's not rated PG-13. There's a lot of F-bombs in it, so if you're near young ears when you turn her on, make sure you turn the volume down or put in the headphones. But you'll probably enjoy it. The boys faced one heck of a storm. Derek, one of our top guides, was out with them. And when they got through the storm, they did manage to have some really, really good fishing up Howe Sound. So check that out. I'll have links in the description below. It's good to kill a few minutes and laugh about guys getting beat up in waves and then beat up by fish. So let's jump right into the fishing stuff. But before we get there, we want to look at sort of what Mother Nature's throwing at us. So we'll look at the weather and we're going to look at the tides. We're filming this sort of Tuesday, Wednesday, so as always, check your weather before you go out. Check your marine forecasts, check your water levels. But like I said, as it stands, the weather looks pretty solid. We're in right now that heat wave that we were looking at last week in the forecast. It didn't get as hot as we expected, but it's still fairly warm out there, pretty nice. It's going to cool off a little bit into the weekend. We might see a touch of rain, but we're definitely going to see the sun poke through as well, so it should be good. We did face some wind this week. It made some of our charters more of a challenge than we'd like, so make sure you check your marine forecast before you get out. Warm weather usually does that in these local waters. Now, on the tide front, it looks like pretty good tides for fishing this weekend. The high tide is in the morning. It's a little early Saturday tomorrow. You'd have to get up really early to catch it. But as we roll into Sunday and Monday, we get that nice early high tide. I always like a big slack tide early in the morning. That'll drop down, obviously, and then we got a low slack in the middle of the day, so if you do get out, that's worth looking at, and it'll push nicely into the evening if you want to go for an evening fish out in the saltwater. So pretty good tides. I wouldn't give them A+ tides, but definitely nothing that we're unhappy about. On the Fraser front, this is a big one. There's maybe not as good news as we would have liked to have heard. When I did the report last week, this announcement actually came out as we were publishing the report. I put it down in the links in the description of that, but ultimately they closed the Fraser to salmon fishing completely. That's area 2910 and 29.9, I believe, and then all the way up the river. So unfortunately, it looks like that's out for the season, I would guess. We're always hopeful that things may change. But it more has to do with sockeye numbers than the pink numbers. We're all sort of looking at it to get out pink fishing. But sockeye numbers are a concern right now. And though pink fishing really has nothing to do with sockeye fishing, there's a lot of politics involved in that, unfortunately. So no fishing for pinks, but I have been doing some research looking at the numbers of the pinks coming through the Fraser right now, and they're ramping up pretty nicely. They were looking at about 5 million fish coming in, which was a relatively low number year. From the numbers I've seen today and yesterday, it looks like they're going to upgrade that. I don't know by how much, but the numbers definitely look encouraging. Now, that is a good thing for anglers because we can look at other rivers connected to the Fraser, and those are still open, so we can take a peek at the Vetter. Heard reports last week of it. We talked about that. There should be more this week. Saw a number of pictures out there from friends and clients. And then there's also the Harrison fishery where you head down towards the mouth of the river. You're staying on the Harrison side of things, so it's still open. And that should ramp up. And the numbers I was looking at, they've got the Pink Passage numbers. You can see them here. And we're sort of like 80,000, which is a little low last week. And now they're ramping up into the 200,000 to 300,000 range. And that's encouraging, and that's better than forecast. So we'll cross our fingers that those fisheries are good for you guys. You might be able to look at them scouting this weekend, but we don't expect peak numbers this weekend. They'll probably come in a week or two. So another little news bit, they, on a different river that we haven't talked about in, years now, because it had a substantial slide, and that's the Seymour on the North Shore. There was a report in let me just make sure I know which publication I'm talking about, North Shore News, that's it. Popped up on my feed, and they've actually found fish above the barrier. So that's great. They found some coho and a steelhead, I believe. And that's huge news. They've been chipping at that rock slide for the past, since the slide. And we're hopeful that that keeps moving in a positive direction. Obviously, just a couple fish are, not conclusive, and we can't expect a ton of fish up there. We can't expect it to be open to fishing. But just as a fishery in general, that's good news that at least what they're doing might, we hope, be making a difference. And we take our hats off to all those boys and girls working on that to see if we can get those fish past that barrier. So the next one we're going to talk about is the Squamish, and this is a really cool fishery right now. It's doing really well, and definitely somewhere you might consider looking if you're heading out on the weekend. The pink salmon are coming through in numbers, and really good numbers. The reports I had Sunday, Monday, Tuesday were debatably the best we've heard this season for sure. And when we look back, we look at 2 years ago, 4 years ago, and then farther, we're definitely better than last season. So that's encouraging. I sat down with Alex. He's been fishing this fishery religiously for 4 cycles now. So that pushes back 8 years. And it's not as good as it was 4 years ago with that amazing run, but it's much better than it was the last cycle. We were worried about this because the early component of this year's pink fishery wasn't all that good. They really didn't show up well at the beaches early on, and the early component in the river was not all that great. But it looks like it's turned around. This middle component, and then hopefully the later component as well, looks very strong. All the clients I talked to, like I said, had really good numbers Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. And you'll definitely want to head out that way if you want to do some spin fishing, some fly fishing, or some float fishing for the pinks out that way. Alex has a bunch of details in the fishing report blog below, some tackle stuff, some stuff you might need to look at if you're heading out there, so don't miss that. Okay, well that covers all the major fishing topics that I wanted to look at this week. As always, there's way more fishing information in the blog post, and I'll have a link to that in the description, so make sure you check it out there. We've got another video that came out this week, and it was on fly casting. It's one that I did, and as you guys know, I teach a lot of introduction to fly fishing courses as well as intermediate courses. And I wanted to do a video on the number one problem I see in all my beginners, but I also see it in my intermediate students. And when I was competition casting, this was a concept that all the competition anglers really focused on. We call it the rail. If you're new to fly fishing, you definitely want to check it out. If you're an intermediate, it's worth looking at as well. I'm going to give you some simple training techniques to just sort of maximize or round out your casting skills. If you're a competition angler, obviously you're not going to tune in, but if you are an aspiring competition caster, I give some tips on what those guys are looking at when they're casting. So, as always, if you've seen anything you like in this video, please hit that like button. If you want to see more videos like this, please hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in next week's report.